ZombieTech. Welcome to ZombieTech, a forum for engineers, scientists, and inventors to ponder on the technologies needed to survive the inevitable zombie apocalypse.
She's Eddie.
He's Whisker.
And, well, we have a return guest this
We
week.
do. Hello.
And I don't think we had much choice on this one. It just sort of had to happen.
It did. It actually really did. We, first, Happy New Year. And happy post Carbon Monoxide Day. That is how we celebrate our Christmas.
Check your sensors, people.
Yes. Yes. And I think, did we tell the story? I'm sure we told the story.
I don't know. I don't know if we have or not.
All right, well, I'll just tell the story for you, Willow, because you probably don't know. So 3 years ago, I think, when one of the first years that we were here in Rochester, around Christmas Eve, I'd say, our carbon monoxide sensor went off. We thought we were going to die, so we, opened all the windows and froze our asses off. And turned out there wasn't actually any carbon monoxide, but now we celebrate Carbon Monoxide Day.
Because we didn't die.
Correct.
And become zombies.
Correct.
Which is really what I think every birthday is about.
Yes, that is true. Happy non-zombie day.
Yay!
Yeah. So, Willow, how are you?
I'm good. A little bit frazzled today, but mostly really good.
Frazzled. Why frazzled?
So I've been forced to take public transit ever since that motorcycle accident that we were just talking about.
You're kidding.
They don't share the same sense of urgency that I think everyone should have.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's okay.
It's kind of a plus minus 5, 10, 15 minutes, maybe an entire bus might go missing. Yeah,
so some of you who listened to the first time Willow was on might remember that she was on the show one-handed, and not for pervy reasons, just because she got in a motorcycle accident. Yeah, so that's not quite back up to par yet, or what?
It's getting there. I went rock climbing for the first time in a very long time.
Whoa.
That's a pretty beefy test.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been working on strength conditioning and flexibility and all sorts of other stuff ever since then, but I have a plate in my arm that's probably a good 5 inches long that's holding everything together.
Wow. Now, so I mean, I'm guessing that means you won't be able to go near an MRI machine anytime soon.
Well, it's titanium, so it's not ferrous.
Ah, I see. Okay.
So it doesn't set off anything at the airport. Saddest of faces.
Okay.
And it's also to go into an MRI.
Like that. Everyone's like, "What are you holding in your arm?" Really? Really? Yes. Yeah. That's awesome.
You gotta watch out for them ferrite smugglers.
I guess. Something. I don't know. I wonder if body mod folks, they must set off alarms like crazy, and then TSA must have no idea what to do with their fingertips.
The magnets that you get into your fingertips, which I'm trying to find someone in the Northwest who can do that. They don't publicize that very hard, but
you know what? We should totally hook you up with
Who was the previous guest that has one of those?
Rosenbaum?
Maybe. Jacob.
Jacob!
Oh.
Do you know him?
I think I do.
Dude, he would totally have the hookups for that. Because he's totally into the body mod scene. And we talked to him about it, and yeah, he would know. And he's in what, Portland?
I don't know. I don't remember.
PDX. PDX is Portland.
I'm headed there next weekend, so that would be awesome.
I'm gonna have to think about this because either he's there or he's heat sink. He's gonna be like.
I think he may have been up in the Pacific Northwest, but moved down to Arizona.
Okay, well, you know what? We're gonna find someone for you.
Or maybe the opposite. Because he's one of the founders of Heatsink, right?
Yes, he is. That's how I.
And then he moved up.
No, that
to Eugene or something.
Is that him?
I think so.
All right.
I don't know. There's so many awesome people.
We are going to do the hookups for you, Willow. Okay?
Hooray!
ZombieTech style. It's going to be excellent. You're going to get to set off all the sensors in the world.
I will curse in your name when they cut into me for that.
It's
I have a friend who initially got the magnetic implants and then realized they couldn't go into an MRI in one
yeah.
of the sketchy countries he goes to unless he was willing to cut it out himself.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
he did a test round of that to make sure that he could do it, and then he went and got him implanted again since he had shown himself that he was willing to go
Take
through
him
the
out.
necessary things.
Oh my gosh. That's about as hardcore gets.
Pretty sure an MRI
Would
machine
do a
would do a
good
good
job
Yeah.
just taking it out.
You-
I'm sure.
Yeah, but I think it's preferable that you are able to decide when it comes out.
Dang it. Yeah, so, and actually speaking of sensors, I would have liked to set off the nuclear sensors at the airport. Because,
oh, when you got your thyroid nuked?
yeah, so since we're talking about our bodily health and whatnot, so I got my thyroid nuked, like, I don't know, sometime last year, 2 years ago or so. And Whisker had to stay away from me, like 10 feet away from me, for like a week. It was fantastic. I mean, not fantastic that he had to stay away, but just that, people had to stay away from me for fear of like radiation poisoning or something.
Yeah.
Totally awesome. And they said that, and they gave me this little card to show anybody like at the airport if I set off any sensors and like alarms that I had gotten nuked. I should have just gone to the like Minneapolis airport that day.
That is the best doctor's note I've ever heard of.
Yeah, good times.
Amazing.
Yep. But so if you want to see Willow's scar, it's pretty hardcore. It's on her Twitter, and that's how we started talking about it. Actually, just because she's got a really gnarly scar there. So.
It looks like I was a really sad youth.
Yeah.
That's when I thought that when I was like, what? And then I read the caption. I was like, oh.
So a recent uber nerdy claim to fame was that I saw that someone had chest surgery and posted the portal guy coming out of it on Reddit. And so I took a picture of the portal guy going into my scar on Reddit. And it made the front page, but mostly because people were arguing over whether it was a self-inflicted thing and how to approach it in a cultural way, and like, was it okay that they were upvoting this thing that might be related to self-harm? And it was funny.
Oh my gosh. Well, at least they have the ethical mind to
lack thereof.
Well, yeah. Well, to debate it, because if it weren't even like something on their conscience that they would think about, then they'd all be upvoting it, right? Instead of debating it. But for our sake, we are totally glad that it was not self-inflicted, that it was, in fact, some idiot driver who... Yeah. So we're glad you're healing.
Thank you. Me too.
Good. So we actually heard from you not too long ago. You were at the tail end of Johnny Diggs's interview. We were chatting with him about Burning Man. And I think he mentioned that you were involved in Occupy Sandy, which is a topic we were particularly interested about.
A lot of ZombieTech guests live right in that area.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, are you working with that, or are we?
So I can give you some context.
Sure.
Because of the connections and awareness that Geeks Without Bounds is privy to of a lot of different projects and people and etc. When FEMA has an innovation lab, which what the fuck is awesome, but really, so they had an innovation team deployed to the field to see what sorts of short-term and long-term issues there were.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up deploying with them because of the connections that Guab has.
Super cool.
Just in like, they knew that I would be able to call on people as needed because I like people and I pay attention to how awesome they are.
Mm-hmm.
And how can I explain this? So I ended up spending a lot of time in Rockaway and Far Rockaway on the first day and just seeing what all was going on. And one of the things that we immediately noticed was that all of the responder groups were treating it, and the federal groups were treating the official first responders as the end user. And that's understandable because it used to be you had no way of talking to the individual.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have cell phones, we didn't have Twitter, we didn't have anything like that. But now you have the ability to hear individual voice, and so it's really changed the game in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the more traditional groups are very aware of that. So it was really cool to figure out that Occupy had a presence because, Occupy initially was very much about mutual aid. And later it seemed like it became more about protest and less about mutual aid. And so this opportunity for the relationships formed initially to be recalled upon, and a lot of the skill sets that had been picked up to be used in this dire situation. And so I went to hang out because those are my peeps, and to see how, if there were any institutional resources that could be made use of by the ad hoc group of Occupy Sandy,
Mm-hmm.
there was anywhere where they needed the institution to get out of their way. So, like, if the NYPD does not trust you because of previous relationships, I can show up with people from FEMA, people from whatever other group, and say, this group is here with good intentions. I need you to let up off of them.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't necessary at any point, but so that was what I was there initially to do. And what I ended up helping out with was they had formed this whole ad hoc response toolkit out of mostly Google Fusion tables, Google Maps, and Google spreadsheets.
Hmm.
And while beautiful and amazing that they had come up with that, I helped them get on a platform called Sahana, which is an open source disaster and humanitarian response specific content management system.
Mm-hmm.
So it's your resources and your volunteers and stuff like that. And just kind of helped facilitate that thing.
Mm-hmm.
That is far more context than you probably actually wanted. But
No, that sounds great. So, when you were down there, what was it like? I mean, what concerns did you end up having to, or I guess what concerns did they have, and what were the short-term things that they found, long-term things that they found?
A main thing that they ended up, so communication is always the problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Humanity can get some really crazy, awesome stuff done if they're just allowed to talk to each other.
Right.
And so inhibitors to that are that all of the networks were down, and hard down, not like you need to reset a box, but that box has been sprayed with salt water and is not coming back anytime soon. Lines are severed, nothing is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And when official groups bring in satellite uplinks, they do so only for the first responders. They do so on a closed network. And so it's not for the community to self-organize. It's for the people coming in to do what they think is necessary, which often is, but it different priorities.
Sure.
And so that's one form of communication. Another form of communication, so there were also some cell phone companies that were coming in to set up comms, but they didn't bother to decouple from each other. And so when one truck would come in, it would cancel the other truck.
Oh.
It was just so stupid. And then also you have groups that are in tents next to each other that don't know how to talk to each other just because it's not a part of their training. So they don't realize that one of the problems that's happening with a heater is because you're out of propane, and someone 2 tents down might have propane, but because they're in the county level engagement and you're in the state level engagement, you wouldn't even know that they were there, let alone go talk to them.
Wow.
And so like that that is so horrifically frustrating as someone who comes from just getting the right people into the room and having them talk about whatever's going on.
Right. It's terribly inefficient.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so because of that, the worst time that I saw, I posted a video of on the Gwa blog, which was it was after Sandy was through, but the nor'easter hadn't come in yet, and we were in the far Rockaways, and the sand dunes are in the streets now. They're not on the beach. You have sand halfway up a house.
Yeah.
And that means that, and as you're driving in, there's also all the insulation in the fence because in the fences along the road because it's either been torn out of the houses during the storm or people have gone through and ripped it out to prevent mold.
Sure.
So the thing about the sand in the streets is that it means that the storm drains are full of sand.
Right.
And the thing about the insulation being outside of the houses means that they're not going to hold in any heat at all.
Perfect for wintertime.
Yeah, and there's no new heat being created because the natural gas lines and the electrical lines have been severed because they run along the shore. People don't know who they're supposed to be talking to because most of the infrastructure is now run by private companies, not by the state or the feds. But people think that it's still up to the state or feds to fix it.
Right.
And because there was a lack of communication, everyone thought that they could stay in their homes despite how awful it was about to be because they thought the lights would come back on any minute now. So that sort of systemic, just systemic issue was awful to see.
Yeah. Yeah. So then how did all of these different agencies quote get their act together to actually help start setting up some sort of infrastructure?
So one of the things that was really good was they started paying attention to where the community disaster recovery centers were, so DRC, and it used to be that FEMA and Red Cross would just come in and set up in a parking lot that could actually handle all of their trucks and the tents that they set up and everything else. But this time, they actually paid some attention to, this group is self-organizing over in this area. Maybe we should just go help them out and support them. And one of the things that the FEMA innovation team was able to do, which was incredible to see, and it was a really great group of people. It was Joe, Steve, and Frank. I'm not going to remember all of their last names right now, but they each got in tiny satellite uplinks, they're VSATs, into those community centers. And so they were able to communicate with the outside world and register people and things like that.
Sure.
And one of the other things that they were doing is like the National Guard and FEMA and Red Cross going to Occupy Sandy and being like, who needs help right now? And that was so good.
That is, yeah, because you guys are trying to, well, from what it sounds like, you guys were trying to set up some sort of centralized hub of information where all the different groups could access. Maybe?
Sort of. I mean, Occupy Sandy was not trying to create a central repository of things, but they were, how can I put this?
They were picking up a hammer and getting busy instead of talking about it.
Yeah, and they were doing a really good job of distributing success outwards rather than just having it all come to them. There's this really awful thing that happens, which when you see someone who seems to be speaking with authority or is being effective, especially in disaster, everyone flocks to them, and then it ends up collapsing under its own weight.
Sure.
And something that Occupy Sandy was doing was sending people out to other areas, making sure that everybody took at least one day off a week, and made sure everyone went out into the field at least one day a week, and made sure that people who were really good at what they were doing went and did it other places. That way everyone was learning, and you have
So, yeah, okay. So
spreading
it's like
among stuff.
teaching how to fish instead of giving fish.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Got it. Got it. Interesting. Now, how long did was your trip out there? How long did it take to set up these types of systems?
I was there for 10 days,
Okay.
which was really long, but also not long enough at all. Um, I helped with the crisis camps the weekend before, so I left on Sunday after the storm and had been doing crisis camps on Friday and Saturday of that weekend. And I mean, all of those systems were just constantly cobbling them together with whatever you had and trying to figure out what to focus on one day, and you're still trying to document so that other people can learn from it while it's fresh and also be onboarded. And there was not a whole lot of sleeping.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to figure out, like, so you have all these different groups in all these different locations, and some of them are set up by themselves. Some are set up by maybe the local community's emergency response um, team or what have you. And somehow these people are managing to either spread the word that they are there, and you guys are uh, setting up, I guess, some sort of infrastructure to see what the problems are, how to fix the problems, and how to give more resources to these satellite communities. Um, I'm trying to figure out because it's such a big system to implement.
Yeah.
So, like, what were some of? I don't even know how to frame my question because there's just like, so say water, right? You guys would know that water and heat are issues. So what would you guys do?
So it's a really good question in that it's something that the team struggled with a lot as well.
Hmm.
And we were not there to solve problems like that.
Okay.
We were there to solve problems like a group that needs access to water does not have it. Why not? Um, does that make sense?
So then, okay, so let's posit this, right? So, say people in section A of this whatever of the city don't have water. You guys ask why can't they get water, and some people say, well, pipes are
Okay.
burst. You know,
Oh,
some
okay. So we would be somewhere, and a group would say, "We're trying to get this section of the population water."
mm-hmm,
And we're running into problems where we can't find people who are supposed to be in charge of this or whatever. But we aren't there to discover the physical problem.
okay,
We're there to figure out what the policy or what the infrastructure, not as in like a building, but the infrastructure as in
who to contact?
yeah, and
Okay,
also yeah, so like what policy changes are in the way? Or is there a policy gap? Which is one of the things that I really think was happening with the community DRCs versus the official ones, is that there's just no existing policy for how do you find a community center and then
mm-hmm, right.
support them, because that hasn't been even a possibility in the past. You wouldn't have been able to seek it out. You just go in and you do what you're there to do.
Right. So like no real emergency plan, in other words.
Right.
Right.
That is up to the Office of Emergency Management.
Mm-hmm.
They're supposed to be doing like the search and rescue and all sorts of other things. So
Mm-hmm.
most of what we did was communication.
Okay. Okay. So then these people, and I'm just trying to understand, what you guys did because it's there are so many levels to the response. Obviously, as you guys, well, I mean, as our conversation is showing. So and Whisker might be able to tease this out for me and like interpret for me because I sometimes like blubber. But so Section A doesn't have water. They don't know who in the world to contact. So you guys get wind of this, and then you guys figure out who to contact.
Yeah,
and then have them fix it, or
yeah, and also to make sure that the conversation is ongoing with the local community.
I see.
Because a lot of the time people would be vocalizing what their needs were, and people would be like, uh-huh, and they wouldn't even write it down.
Well, what's the point of doing that? I mean, it's like that just seems silly to me because...
Well, do keep in mind the absolute state of chaos.
Yeah.
I mean, so-and-so wants water back on their house. Yeah, there's like
200, like 2,000
people just on this street that want something too. So, we're going to do what helps the most people at the same time. And the groups that were doing those kinds of things, actually trying to get things fixed and trying to get things back up and running, don't necessarily know who the heck to call or how to make sure that that person can answer their phone. You're talking about a situation where the local, guy in charge of the, that shift at the water, company doesn't have a cell phone because the cell phones are out, doesn't have a landline. Just getting in contact with the local people that are actually in charge of things must have been an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, they are very oversaturated.
Now, did you guys end up getting information or getting requests from like, I guess what percentage in terms of like people, just normal lay citizens versus responders? Was there more, you were talking more with responders, or were you talking more with lay citizens?
I think we had a really good cross section, honestly. I would be surprised if it wasn't 50-50, mostly because we would spend one day talking to the people at the official disaster recovery centers about what their structure was like and how they needed help and who they needed to get word to and things like that. And then the next day we would spend walking around neighborhoods and seeing where people were at and listening to their stories and trying to get enough information that we could do pattern recognition, the systemic problems.
Interesting. Now, so are you still in contact with the Occupy Sandy effort, or is that you've pretty much given the reins to them at this point?
Oh, I never took the reins from them.
Oh, I guess I shouldn't say reins. I mean, like, are you still involved with that effort at this point?
I am friends with some of the people that are there either previously or because of this. And we had a very lovely video cast with them recently, with some of them, just to follow up and see how things were going. And, and I have a call with someone in a few more days. But I'm trying to just make sure that they have the resources that they need without being needed in any way for their efforts.
Sure. And I just want to let people know, because I know a lot of people wanted to volunteer, to help folks with Sandy, and a lot of people didn't know where to go. And I actually heard a lot of people saying, I'm just going to go and I'm going to help. And I'd ask them, well, do you know with what organization you're going to, where are you going to report to, where are you going to stay? They're like, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to go up and help. I don't know how dangerous that is, one, but there is obviously this Occupy Sandy effort, and I believe interoccupy.net/Occupy Sandy is a website where you can look for opportunities to volunteer, resources that they may need. So I would urge everybody to check that out.
Yeah, they did a really good job of not only pulling in a lot of information about volunteer needs and resource needs, but also in keeping it really up to date. And they had a really large scale operation going on.
Right.
But so I'm a bit of a control freak, and and the knowledge that there was this huge influx of volunteers coming, especially from faith-based groups, the weekend after the nor'easter went through,
Mm-hmm.
was awful for me because you don't know what they're doing. Like you don't know who they are. There's no assurance of their safety or the safety of the people that they're going to interact with.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way to really pair up someone with a task that will suit them. But here's the thing is that as much as that really bothered me just on a like neurotic because of my own neuroses, um it was fine. Like they got a whole lot of good work done. And yes, it could have been done more efficiently. Yes, it would be good if we could do this over a longer term. Yes, it would be good if these groups would talk to each other instead of all just deploying to the same area at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the other thing is that as much pre-planning as you do, the field is so crazy,
Yeah.
so chaotic that even with perfect planning, there's asynchronous communication between what's happening on the ground and where your comm center is.
Sure.
That if you send someone out with a box of soup, by the time they get to where they were supposed to go,
It's gone.
it's gone, the people are gone, it's already been taken care of, whatever. And so then you have someone standing there with a box of soup going, what am I supposed to do now?
Mm-hmm.
And it's in those situations where it's really nice to have a greater purpose of like instead of saying take this box of food to this place, saying um, get this food to this area. We hear that these are the people who have the most need right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because then it doesn't matter if you what organization you're with.
Right.
And it's great if we have report back functions and like that emerges over time, but in the immediate aftermath, just go and be willing to do whatever needs to happen, but do it with an organization.
Right.
Because then they can help be sure that you're safer, that you're not left out of the field somewhere, that
Mm-hmm.
nobody knows. And it's already chaotic enough. Do not add your own good intentions into that mess.
And it's
So-
good to educate the public on the sort of reality of if you're talking about a huge disaster like this or Katrina or anything like this,
Mm-hmm.
having a bunch of extra people run in after a couple of days isn't helpful
No.
necessarily. It can actually cause a lot of problems because you don't have food, you don't have water, you don't have the things that the people who want to help are going to need because you don't even have the stuff for the people who are already there. And people, think they'll get around that by bringing stuff with them, planning on handing it out and whatnot. But stuff goes away really quickly.
Yeah.
And when you're working hard, you're going to use a lot more food, you're going to drink a lot more water, and you're going to go through it faster than you think you are. So unless you kind of know what you're doing, unless you kind of have some experience with this, I wouldn't necessarily recommend, just shooting from the hip on this one.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the sort of situation that you should get into lightly. Now, with that said, I think it's really good that people want to help.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is something that we deal with in digital volunteer groups as well, where one of the things that happened during the crisis camps is that people, so I really feel like one of the reasons that people want to step up and take an active role and volunteer and go out and do something. It's because they have a good heart, but it's also because the world just went batshit and you create something and you give back in whatever way you understand in order to reclaim a sense of security
Mm-hmm.
and a sense of understanding of what's going on. Which it's great. It's a human characteristic, totally awesome. Don't stop doing it. But for the digital humanitarian communities, they'll build tools that don't matter. Like they'll try to build things that have already been built. And then because another skill set is that of marketing, and because we have social platforms that amplify signal and noise alike, they get the word out in a way like their tool isn't ready yet, and they'll try to push propagated all over the place, thinking that it's a release early and release often MO from software.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the, sorry, I'm kind of ranty about this.
No, that's okay. Go for it.
It's not the time to do that. If you want to do something that actually matters, sign on to a group, like contribute to something that already exists and has already been proven. Innovation in disaster response is not disruptive in the same way that technology and social innovation or whatever is disruptive.
Mm.
It's not the time for it.
Sure. And I think in our last conversation we did talk about like apps that were made in the heat of the moment, so to speak, as opposed to prepared. And I do remember thinking, well, it's nice, the idea is nice, but the execution could cause more trouble than it's worth.
Yeah. And there are a few exceptions, but those are usually made by people who have been a part of it for so long, who are probably have experience with either a situation in general or with the geographic area that is happening in, things like that. But for instance, map mill that was used during the Isaac and Sandy, that was the basically hot or not for aerial imagery and damage. Did you see this?
No. Wow.
So Civil Air Patrol goes up and they take a bunch of pictures, and then this app stitches all those together, and people can just go through and click of no damage at all, minor damage, major damage.
Ah, I see.
And you end up with a heat map of where really, really awful things have happened.
Yeah, interesting.
Which is awesome because it means that you can sort of circumvent the chain of power and request that it usually has to go through in order to get any sort of response.
Mm-hmm.
So it's usually the city talks to the county, and the county talks to the state, and the state talks to a federal group, and then they deploy into the area. Whereas this, we're just like, hey, this damages area, or this area is damaged. Talk to the locals, say, do you need help, and then get them help.
Right.
Like, it's so much better.
Right.
That was built quickly by people who are incredibly already invested in that community, mostly from humanitarian OpenStreetMap team. And it was started on months in advance and then was able to be deployed quickly because they had that sort of experience and we knew who to ask.
Right. So then in terms of Sandy, were there any particular apps that you guys used or that you think could have been or should be, I guess, enhanced or further worked on, etc.?
Yeah, damage assessment is a huge thing, and it's being worked on several fronts, and I hope one of them pans out sometime soon.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the problem of registering people so that they can get federal aid. So FEMA is mostly just there to write checks. They used to do a whole lot more, but there's a whole political conversation to happen there that revolves around a past president.
Mm-hmm.
Diplomacy.
And that kind of ties into something that I kind of wanted to bring up. My experience with this sort of thing stems from, in a previous life, I was a public affairs specialist for a National Guard. And this is back in the 90s, and we did some, local aid stuff.
Hmm.
And back in that era, there wasn't a whole lot of natural disasters going on at the time.
Worst was maybe, what, in 93?
The worst sort of thing that we did was like, okay, there's people hungry and it's Christmas time. Let's go make sure they've got food. And let's make sure we take a lot of pictures so we look really good.
Hmm.
And, after I was out, the whole Katrina thing happened. And the same kind of people that I was, an active part of earlier
mm-hmm.
were rolling around the streets pointing guns at the people they were supposed to help. I mean, it's like night and day. I mean, we weren't exactly, because we were there for, taking pictures and looking good, I don't think we were exactly pure either, but that was just horrible.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really glad to hear that the National Guard in the area there was actually willing to work with the other groups.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really glad to hear that FEMA has been put back in the role of cutting checks instead of, doing bad things.
Sure.
Yeah, and they're working on being able to do more good things, and I have a lot of trust in the people who are at the helm of FEMA these days.
Mm-hmm.
I had the honor of spending some time with them, and I, they are field guys, which means that they don't have time for political bullshit,
Good.
which makes me far happier.
Good. Yeah. No one has time for that type of stuff.
Yeah,
Really.
but there's a hierarchy of understanding, and for groups like FEMA and National Guard, where they're there with a very large and limited purpose. And I think National Guard can be a little bit more one-on-one, and their presence is very much just. I think it's okay that they're there to get their pictures taken because people have a lot of. They care a lot. It helps with their feeling of safety, which therefore helps them be safer.
Yeah, I definitely got that feeling doing it myself, showing up and giving food to families in need and, toys to kids for Christmas, whatever. Just wearing the uniform and doing something like that, you get a response from them that they recognize that they don't even necessarily see your face. They just see that uniform and they associate it with, we're taken care of, we're protected. Things may be rough at the moment, but it'll get better.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very,
visceral.
You just feel it in the air in the situation. And I think that's a really useful thing. And I'm glad they were able to go out there and do that. But we were told many, many, many times that, we're not there to do anything beyond what we're supposed to do. Right. She said limited capacity. Yes, very limited capacity.
Yeah, and that's the thing though, is that traditional and hierarchical organizations are really good at doing the one thing that they're there to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's wonderful and that's necessary. It's when we start to put more expectation on those groups than they're able to handle. And when their purpose is warped, which does happen sometimes, and I'm glad that it's pulling back from that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But understanding that one of the conversations that I kept having with people in Occupy Sandy was there's an inherent distrust of groups that are that large, and I totally understand that, but they have things to offer that groups like Occupy Sandy will not be able to ever do. And in our current system, we still have to have those capabilities built in. There might come a time when we can be so connected to each other and so self-aware and so lacking ego. Like we can be so anarchistic or socialist that we won't need those sorts of hierarchical and established organizations, but right now we do.
Sure.
And saying that they can be here to help you out in ways that you can't handle, but they need you to take care of the things that they can't handle, and it's an equal partnership. It's just different.
Yeah, I've seen like the engineering corps guys make a road in like a half hour through forest. You cannot do that by yourself. And if you need an easy way to get a whole bunch of propane into an area that's just completely, all the trees are blown over and all the streets are closed, you need stuff like that to be able to get it clear, get it open, and get those guys in there. And individuals helping each other can get that job done, but it's going to take a week, and sometimes you don't have a week.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So, I mean, I personally could talk about Occupy Sandy for forever, but you are
doing a bunch of other stuff too,
yeah,
I'm sure.
Like, you are a busy chick. And so it looks like, okay, so you're currently directing Geeks Without Bounds,
yes,
which is awesome. And I think a congratulations is also in order for you, because in February you'll be moving to Boston because you're going to be a research affiliate at the Center for Civic Media out of MIT.
It's true.
Woo! Congratulations. That's
Hey,
awesome. So what is it? Like what are you going to do there? What's the deal?
I'm going to study how decentralized groups scale.
That's interesting.
How decentralized groups scale.
Yeah,
What kind of decentralized groups?
all sorts of them. Here, just like I'll paste my. I just also applied to the Berkman Center, which used to be the Center for Cyber Law, but is now the Center for Internet and Society.
Super cool.
And so this was the application that I just sent them that you're welcome to share if you are so inclined.
Awesome. I will look at it.
And it involves stick figures, which is kind of my forte.
So,
but yeah, been doing that and gearing up to go do a gender-based violence hackathon in Port-au-Prince.
wow.
Which is super exciting. And
wait, is that where chicks with like blue mohawks pick on skinny nerdy guys, or something different?
No.
Oh, I thought you were like enabling some bad behavior there. I get it.
No, it's so there's a really bad prevalence of rape in Haiti, and not a whole lot of infrastructure to deal with it. And so Digital Democracy has put in a short code that goes to a call center where you get to hear a human voice on the other end of the line who's going to help you out, and they direct you to local to you resources, whether it's a doctor or a counselor or whoever you need, who will treat you in the right sort of way.
That is fantastic.
Yeah. And I'm sure Haiti is still pretty
beat up from
their infrastructure is probably completely still in chaos.
Yeah. And so we're going to help them build out the capabilities of the call line so that the operator can pay more attention to the person on the other end of the line because they'll be struggling with the interface. We're going to help them with visualizing some of the data so that they can advocate for systemic change. And we're going to work on handing it off to the local population.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
That's nice. Give them the tools, teach them how to use it, and then let them run with it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that actually sounds like something you'd probably want to send over to your contacts in India, too, just based on recent events.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. When does this go live, this show?
Thursday.
So tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I'll hold off on telling you something because it has to wait until we announce the teams for Geeks Without Bounds.
Okay, we'll talk about that after the show.
Then. Okay. Sorry, guys.
Is that and doing a hackathon in San Francisco soon that's called Everyone Hacks.
Cool.
That I'm really excited about because HP came to Geeks Without Bounds and was like, we want a ladies hackathon. It was like, how about a hackathon that's safe space for everyone? And
you know what? You are my favorite. You are my absolute favorite.
Rock on.
I hate. Okay.
Yeah, that annoys the crap out of
the
us.
Piss
really
out of me. What is this ladies hackathon? What do you expect us to do? Embroider?
Yeah.
Quilt? I'm confused.
Knitting.
What is this? I hate it when they do. Okay, sorry.
No,
I could get ranty on that.
So we're gonna do workshops that are not just for UI, UX, and APIs and things like that, but also allies training. And so I'm really thrilled about that.
Wait, allies training?
Allies training from Geek Feminism and the ADA initiative.
You are gonna have to tell me about that. I don't know what that is.
It's basically, instead of just training people or like talking to people about how to deal with harassment or training people to not harass, you also train the people who are bystanders, essentially, of how do you stand up for what you know is wrong, or like, yeah.
You know, you would think that with all of the news stories from the past 2-3 decades, at least for my life, 2 decades and some change, that people would be more willing to step in and help. And I don't necessarily mean like when a physical altercation is happening, because sometimes that's, people are like, well, I could be killed, and
Killed usually is more along the lines of I could get fired. When I was a journalist in the Guard, tailhook was going on, and there was all sorts of that kind of nonsense. People weren't saying anything because, you get fired.
Well, that's just the worst thing.
Court-martialed, as it were.
When has any good come out of people not saying anything?
I don't know. If I saw something like that, I'd probably put a strainer on my head, walk into the middle of the room, and just be ridiculous until people behave themselves.
Yeah, they might get more scared of the crazy man.
Yeah, I mean, you can approach it in all sorts of ways to diffuse situations like that. That can be helpful sometimes. But honestly, the way that I grew up and the way that I was raised, if somebody's being a butthead, you basically just tell them to knock it off. And if they punch you in the mouth, they punch you in the mouth. But at least you stood up and,
True.
And then you get to punch them if they punched you first, which is the best of times.
Excellent. So this allies training, which sounds very cool. You guys are going to teach that at this Everybody Hacks.
Uh-huh.
Awesome thing. Very cool.
Super about that.
Good. Yeah, I can count quite a few times actually. And I don't know if Whisker knows some of these stories, but I can count quite a few times where I've been I think it's usually been non-violent situations, but like somebody was throwing up in the middle of an aisle at a store, so you have 100 gawkers and not one person goes over to ask how she is.
Yeah. And
Things
this is
like that.
If we can bring this into the zombie theme.
Yes.
After the zombie apocalypse, we're going to be rebuilding not only our food sources and our buildings, but also our society.
Yes.
And this is one of those things that we have to think about actively and start to do now. That way it's easier during that time of what is mutual aid and what is it to, as my friend Travis says, what is it to be a good neighbor?
That's a very good point, especially because in the zombie apocalypse, suddenly everything you have that's a resource is extremely valuable. So at what point do we help our fellow person?
Yeah, living in a community where
it's a difficult
you
question.
have good neighbors and people are willing to help each other out and share is a good position to be in, in the case of a disaster. There was problems in Katrina and people weren't necessarily in a position to help each other. So that's not exactly a good example, but here in Sandy, a lot of people did stick around, and we actually got to hear from a lot of them right as things were happening. And I heard a lot of stories about neighbors being good neighbors, and that made me happy.
Yeah.
That was the one thing that I saw consistently that determined how resilient a neighborhood was.
Mm.
If the neighbors tended to talk to each other and they knew who lived down the block, and when you are asking someone if they know what's going on, or like you need to find a invisible population or whatever, and you're saying, I heard that there might be a hair salon around the corner that someone knew a thing, and like it's all word of mouth, and the person's like, you know what, I know the daughter of that person and I'm gonna call them up right now, or I saw them earlier at the barbecue or whatever. It was an indicator that community was going to be okay, regardless of how damaged their homes were. And it was the places where they didn't talk to each other at all, that they weren't even bothering to
see if anyone else was okay, or
and those places were not resilient. They were incredibly fragile.
That is very interesting. I don't think we've really broached the topic of human goodness yet.
Because we usually just default to your neighbors are going to try to eat you.
Yeah.
Shoot them.
I really don't think that is the case. If you look at what happens to areas in times of duress, people tend to try to help each other, and I really believe it will be the same in the zombie apocalypse.
That is a very optimistic and comforting thought. I think it may not make the zombie apocalypse all that difficult. I mean, I don't know. I had to think about the infrastructure for a little bit, but I should hope that that our
So my
neighbors
advice
won't
there would be
try to kill
move
us.
to a neighborhood where the people don't suck.
Well, you don't even have to move somewhere. Like, how about talk to the neighbors you have right
Might
now?
not be such a bad idea.
Yeah. And that would be sort of a decentralized social group, and then Willow can come study you.
It's true.
Yes. You can just stay in your living room, just leave your blinds up.
Wow, you would be like the expert for decentralized groups once the zombie apocalypse hits.
I'm hoping that it will make me worth my bread,
That's awesome.
because I don't know how to farm.
Don't worry, we got that covered. We're sending the coordinates to you, so
Sweet.
we
thank
got you. We got you covered. We got you covered. So wow, okay. So we've got Boston in February. We've got the hackathon. Is it coming up? Does everybody? Okay.
So the hackathon in San Francisco is January 18th to 20th. The hackathon in Port-au-Prince is, I believe, the first weekend of February.
Wow.
Yeah, doing all sorts of things.
Awesome. And then what's gonna happen? Are you gonna stay on as director of Geeks Without Bounds, or are you gonna move on and pass the torch to somebody else?
I would really like to stay director. I love doing it. I have full intentions of, and an amazing person named Lindsay has taken on the day-to-day interactions.
Awesome.
And I'll probably not hog all of the speaking engagements, but hopefully Diggs will be able to take on more of those.
Sure. Well, you're not as control freak as it may seem then.
Yeah, it's true.
Or at least we won't talk about that aspect here.
Oh no, I mean, that's one of the things that I really hope we figure out for this whole zombie apocalypse thing is modern pharmaceuticals, because the mood stabilizer that I've been on has done wonders for my ability to not be freaked out about a lack of control at all times.
Social anxiety, dude.
Oh, so bad.
But I don't know which Willow I'd want on my team, going through the streets trying to, steal food.
The slightly twitchy one? Or
yeah. He's like, you looking at me funny, zombie? Clack, clack.
No, I mean, I still do that even when I'm more stable. I just have more control over when I do it.
Control is good, though. little bit of control is good. Well, I'm glad that the pharmaceuticals have done you good. Actually, I have a mind to try to learn how to produce like the base, like penicillin. I figure if the scientists way back when did it, I should be able to do it. So at least we'll have penicillin. Or bread mold. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. We'll figure it out.
Sounds good.
Cool. So, are there any other projects that you have been dabbling in, or?
Yeah, we got just a couple of minutes left.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like people to know about?
Mm-hmm.
Good. We're gonna do Space Apps Challenge again in April, which is super exciting. That'll be all over the globe, and that's with NASA.
Ooh.
And let's see, I don't know. Go check out your local makerspace, always and forever.
Yes, ours is down in the basement.
Yeah.
Good.
Yep.
It's an easy commute.
Sometimes it's too easy when you trip and fall.
Yeah, it's really bad when you don't want to put your shoes on and you go down there and you're in the shop and there's wood chips. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And people come over and they're like, "Why are you sawing things in your underpants?"
Awkward.
That's all the time we have for this week, folks. Thank you for tuning in to ZombieTech. We'll be back next week, hopefully. It's been kind of hard to get guests over the last few weeks.
It kind of has been.
All the holidays going on.
Yeah, no one wants to talk.
If anyone out there wants to get somebody on the show, just let us know. We'll try to get them.
Yep.
We're pretty good about that. So ZombieTech.tv, released on Thursdays. You can download it right there on the page. Push play, RSS feed for your phone, car, whatever. We're living in the future. You guys know the drill. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Okay, bye.